The best estimate by leading vaccine producers is that it could take a year or more to develop, test, and manufacture a vaccine for the clade X virus.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. You know, is the price worth it? We think the price is worth it.
Richie Brown Show.
Right, good afternoon and welcome to the Diplomatic Post. Today I'm going to be reading my article titled Ukrainian Emigres in Canada of the Waffen SS 14th Division Bombed Gathering of Left-Leaning Labour Groups in Toronto. Right, so this is the original article where they talk about Ukrainian Nazis bombing left-wing labour groups. In 1950, Toronto, Ukrainian members of the Waffen SS Division, aka the Butcher Brigade, bombed a gathering of left-leaning Ukrainian labour groups in Toronto. Ukrainian Nazis were specifically imported by the Canadian government at the time to suppress and literally murder the Ukrainian left-wing movements in Canada, which already had a presence there since the late 1800s. The RCMP files related to this terrorist incident are still classified to this day. This is of urgent news to Britain and the British people. Our British capitalist class, which can no longer be considered British given how they consider themselves global architects and cosmopolitans, so they more in effect act like a kind of occupation government over the British people, has something of an ethnic hatred of Russia as a political polity. Going way back to the Crimean War, which is basically being replayed today in Ukraine, NATO officials now openly talk about breaking up Russia. Thousands of Ukrainian Nazis were screwed out of Ukraine and set up as racially aggrieved emigres in London, Washington and Toronto. The West used these emigre groups, pumped them full of nationalism and hid their Nazi collaboration so they would be stupid enough to wage war against Russia. The question of communism is an irrelevant one, otherwise NATO would have stopped protecting them, and halls of the bourgeoisie like Victoria Nuland would not be announcing how she spent $5 billion funding them after 1991 and Soviet collapse. But the OUN stormtroopers, like any terrorist group, priced action over theory. Their wartime brutalities have been amply documented. They recruited for the Waffen SS, pulled the triggers at Baba Yar and Sobibor, ran the gas chamber at Treblinka during their brief interludes of Nazi-sponsored independence in the Carpatho, Ukraine in 1939, and in Galicia in 1941. Pogroms were the order of the day in the spirit of their revered Simon Petlerer. They strove to outdo the Nazis at every turn. And when the Third Reich fell, the nationalists fled to Munich, to Toronto, and with the covert aid of the US State Department, which viewed them as potential anti-Soviet guerrillas, to New York and Chicago and Cleveland. This is not ancient history. Ukrainian emigre groups still contain more than a few former OUN members and many of their sons and daughters. So that OUN was the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, and they collaborated with the Hitlerites during World War II. They set up like the occupation government of Ukraine. Even as Germany had General Plan Ost, which was to basically murder everyone in Ukraine and replace them with German colonizers. The nationalists still heroize their wartime past. On occasion, their old passions surface as well. As in, why is one Holocaust worth more than others? Recently published by veterans of the Ukrainian Insurgent Army. In 1933, the majority of the European and American press controlled by the Jews were silent about the famine, unquote. From this perspective, the conspiracy lives on. In February 1986, the Jewish newspaper Village Voice published 1.5 pages of accusations against the high-standing member of the Ukrainian nationalist movement, Mykola Lebed, and that's from the very good article by the Village Voice, In Search of a Soviet Holocaust, which they wrote in the late 1980s. Canadian authorities let these Nazis in because they were anti-communist. A newspaper from the Canadian Ukrainian in 1948 makes the following point, that some of the Ukrainians come in were outright Nazis. Already they are using terrorist means to break up meetings, intimidate Canadian citizens. Many of them are openly boasting about how they will smash trade unions and cut communist throats at some early future. Ukrainian Canadian, that's back in 1948. And I'll read the article that the Ukrainian Canadian released. What of the DPs? Tens of thousands of persons from DPs camps in Germany and Austria are being brought to Canada. Government plans call for many thousands more to be brought here, and many of them are of Ukrainian origin. Who are these people? Some are outright Nazis who served in the German army and police. It is reported that even individuals tattooed with the dread SS, Hitler's elite torturers and murderers have been passed on RCMP orders after being turned down by screening agencies in Europe. Others are of the professional and business circles trained in the Austro-German tradition, who were nationalist collaborators of the German fascists. Still others are people who were forcibly taken in Germany in their early teens and educated there in the Nazi manner. Of course, there are also some who, in search of adventure or an easy way of getting into golden Canada, or for any other number of reasons, found their way into these camps. This is a tragedy for Ukrainians, even if their number is only a few thousands from among more than 40 million people. And while not for one moment absolving the people involved, we cannot but feel multiplied hatred of the German Machiavellis, of diabolical Hitlerism, of the savage nationalist teachings that are the real authors of their tragedy. Now a Canadian problem, but despite all warnings our government has seen fit to bring these people over here, they are now a Canadian problem. What is that problem? Although some of them are doubtless being cured, and more will be, by being brought into the stream of Canadian life, the majority constitute a dangerous element in our country. Already they are kicking that they did not come here to work, but to act as anti-communist police and wait for the day when they will march to war against their native land under some new Hitler. Already they are using terrorist means to break up meetings, intimidate Canadian citizens. Already there have been vicious internal factional clashes and suicides among them. Many of them are openly boasting about how they will smash trade unions and cut communist throats. Canada has some early future. With growing unemployment, with mining, lumber and other industrial barons seeking to break up the labour movement, with native fascism once again rearing its head, these people will supply Hitler-trained stormtroopers and strikebreakers. A section will swell the criminal underworld, and their ideological leaders are already busy fomenting World War III, propagating a new world holocaust in which Canada would perish. The danger to Canada's peace and security is real and menacing. Canadians must be on guard. Already there are dark mutterings in many quarters as jobless war veterans walk the streets, or Hitler's ex-soldiers take their jobs, as union men see the plot unfolding to smash their organisations with the help of DPs and lower wages, as Canadian labour men are persecuted while foreign fascists get a free hand. There is a danger that these things will give rise to new waves of anti-foreignism, upsetting the unity of the Canadians of all origins, which is the lifeline of labour and democracy in our country. This must not be allowed to happen. The whole Canadian public must be warned, and we must all stand together to bring the danger down to the minimum, to re-educate as many of these DPs as will be amenable to democratic doctrine, and to make it impossible for the rest to become a threat to Canada's peace, security and democracy. We get a glimpse here of how the transnational cosmopolitan dictatorship of the bourgeoisie works. They finance, arm and have the CIA protect former Nazis who engaged in mass murder as a weapon of anti-communism, as a means to preventing inevitable revolution in capitalist states. Because of the Ukraine war and Britain's participation in it, we have imported many thousands of these OUN Banderite psychos. British people will have to consider a mass deportation of Ukrainians instead of allowing these East Europeans with racial grievance toward Russia affect our political life. Now, that still goes on in Canada to this day, basically. You remember that the Canadian Parliament managed to find like one of the only SS officers still alive and give him a standing ovation in Parliament. Absolutely disgusting.
We have here in the chamber today Ukrainian Canadian World veteran from the Second World War who fought the Ukrainian independence against the Russians and continues to support the troops today, even at his age of 98. He's a Ukrainian hero, a Canadian hero, and we thank him for all his service. To make a brief statement. I wish to apologize to the House. No one, including you, my fellow parliamentarians, or the Ukraine delegation, was privy to my remarks prior to their delivery.
But that's our future because we've imported so many of these Banderite bastards. Anyway, thank you very much. That's the end of this transmission. Feel free to contribute to the crowdfunder of the site. Feel free not to. Make sure you like and subscribe. Richie Brown out.